Hi, everybody. Welcome to Small Steps, Big Life. My name is Nathan Aswell, and I'm based in White Rock, Canada. That's about 40 minutes south of Vancouver. And this show is about sharing people with you that I think are living really interesting, big, juicy lives and how they got there one step at a time. And today it is my extreme pleasure to have back, and I'll explain that in a minute, the mother and daughter team of Caitlin Mellor and Denise Cunningham. And we actually spoke a few days ago, but somehow there was a glitch that happened on the Blab system, and so we only caught about the first quarter of our conversation. So Caitlin and Denise were kind enough to come back, and we get the advantage of speaking to them a second time and find out what happened last night. They had a big event last night, which we'll talk about in great detail. But first, let me just say hello. Welcome back.
Hello.
Thank you for being kind enough to play one more time. So before we get to what happened last night, let's give everybody a little let's go around the bases again. So who would like to start just talking a little bit about themselves? Rock, paper, scissors. You
want to start? You started last time.
Sure. Okay. I'm a photographer, fitness coach, and writer. I've been doing photography sort of all my life since I was 8 years old and got my first film camera. And then I graduated into digital and started my own business at 19 and have been doing photography ever since. And I do my fitness coaching and writing as well as that.
But not all at the same time, I'm hoping.
No, sometimes they intertwine, but not all at the same time.
Picture of you on a treadmill with a camera and writing. And
yeah.
Way too much.
No.
Thanks, Kayla. Denise,
Yeah.
what would you like to say?
Well, let's see. I'm probably first love is fabric art, and I'm also a public speaker and a writer. And is this about how we began, or just where we're at?
Just where you're at right now, and then we'll go back in a minute. Just giving people a little overview of you.
Okay, so that's good for now.
And both of you are in Langley at your office, your place of business.
Yeah.
And what is that exactly? Tell people what you do during the day.
I'm a director of an administration department for a private post-secondary school. So they do counselor training and personal development courses and workshops and things.
And there's nobody there now?
So
there's nobody there now, so that's why you can do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's kind of you to vacate the entire building just for our conversation. You obviously have a lot of pull there. That's great.
We have a sign on the door that says, "Please do not disturb," and locked the door. So we're hoping that works.
Hopefully everybody there can read. Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the two of you as artists. You have many identities, of course, but what we want to focus on for the next little bit, anyway, is just your identities as artists. So Caitlin, 8 years old, you started with the camera. So how did that happen?
Yes.
Did someone put a camera in your hands? Did you see a picture and go, "Wow, I want to make something like that"? What happened?
My uncle bought me and my sister these little toy cameras. Mine was an orange cat. It was an orange cat film camera. And it was just sort of the casing for the camera. Just once I had it in my hands, I just found it so interesting to take pictures of things and getting so excited to wait and get them developed and see how they actually turned out. And after that, it just sort of grew as a love. And my mom even remembers she'll pull over the car so I can get the perfect picture of a sunset or a sunrise. Wow. And different things like that.
and then going off to like London Drugs or whatever to get them developed and.
Yeah, just getting them developed and waiting and being excited to open the package and flip through them and see what worked, what didn't work. And I mean, at the time I had no knowledge of how to function a film camera. But I'm still pretty surprised looking back at the pictures I took. I love a lot of my film work quite a bit.
Well, that's something that I remember your mom saying before we spoke on Monday, when we were having a chat a few days before that, just making sure that you knew how to work Blab and everything, just talking about how she would be with you and you would take a picture, and then she would show the picture to you, and she hadn't seen what you had seen. That there was a way that you had created a moment through the lens that, everyone around probably wouldn't have seen, but you caught it, and, being able to share it with you. And it was just a very powerful moment. And I get that. I can see how, that is the appeal of photography. You see things in a way that nobody else does. But to be able to have somebody else feel it too, of course, is the goal, right? You don't want it to just be something that really lights you up. You want it to light the people that are looking at it to feel the same way. So, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've said to Caitlin before that her gift with photography, she's able to find the seemingly ordinary and make it extraordinary in her photos. So the things that those of us who don't have that eye don't necessarily see, when I see her photograph, then it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Now I see this in a whole new way.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your artistic process, Denise.
Mine began with my grandmother. My dad's mom was one of my favorite people in the world, and I used to get to go and spend weekends every now and again at her house. And one of the many things she did was she sewed silk ties and handkerchiefs for a men's department store. And she had one of those old Singer treadle sewing machines, and so she would be just whipping away sewing those things, and I would be sitting on the floor beside the sewing machine playing with the scraps of silk fabric. So I think that's where it began. I'm primarily visual and kinesthetic, so the feel of the silk, and that's probably where my fabric addiction started. was way back then. And it just grew from there, like the number of fabrics and the patterns, like that whole visual thing is that's primary, and then the feel of it and piecing it together, that's I think that's where it began for me.
And do you remember the sound of the sewing machine?
Oh, absolutely.
My mom had a sewing machine too. I don't think she was anywhere near the artist that your mom was, but I remember that very clearly. I can hear it now as I'm talking to you about it.
Yeah.
And the little pedal on the bottom, which is where I would be, like you, looking at the pedal.
Yeah.
Wow, how does this all work? Anyway.
And she could make that thing fly like I did. Yeah.
Well, that's the great thing, right? Whether it's a sewing machine or a camera or whatever it is, whatever we decide to create a relationship with as artists, it becomes an extension of who we are. So this thing which looks completely unwieldy, and how the heck do I work this, even if it's an orange cat, becomes this doorway into a whole other world that not only we can create, but only we can create it in the specific way that we create. So wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about what happened last night. So the two of you have been, well, at some point, okay, let's back up a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll back up. When did you get the idea to do what you did last night, which was a shared art show? When did all that happen? Because you've both been expressing yourself for years, artistically.
Yeah, I think it started it was 2013. Mm-hmm. We registered together for a table at a show in Langley called Arts Alive. It's like an outdoor show on the one way in the main part of Langley. And I think I corralled Caitlin into doing that because I saw her incredible gift with photography and really wanted, I wanted more so for her to experience success and people seeing what I saw. And I had my stuff there too, which was good. I think I had my books and my fabric art as well, and sold some of my stuff. And it was just, we started there, and then we talked about, because it was, that particular show felt like it was more people looking for arts and crafts than fine arts. Right. It just didn't feel like it was the right venue for us. So then we started talking about, well, let's what about if we got a venue and did our own show? And we started to look, and then Caitlin decided to move to Europe, and she was gone for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And no, not even that long, 6 months, yeah. And then ended up coming back because her father was ill. And so then we said, like, if we're going to do this, let's do it now. And I don't know, what was your experience?
Yeah, I think the Arts Alive was just sort of the beginning of us doing things together and collaborating. But like Mom said, from there, it just wasn't really the right, I guess, people coming to see it. They did want more arts and crafts. So then that kind of spawned on wanting to do something in a venue. And we had talked about it and discussed it, but my life kind of took me on a different journey. And once life brought me back here, and finally things kind of amped up that I could get back to Europe, it was sort of like, well, you know what, we've put this off, and it just wasn't the right timing before, but now it was. And we set a date, and we just went full speed ahead to get it done before I move.
Now, just to back up for a second for me, I mean, so you had this experience in 2013, but I imagine there must have been countless moments where you'd be both at home and, Denise, you'd say, God, Caitlin, what a beautiful image. Or, Caitlin, you'd say, wow, Mom, that's really great. Like a lot of mutual respect and admiration for each other's processes, but it was years before you said, hey, let's do something together. I'm assuming.
Yeah, we never really did much together. Mom came up with the idea to have an art room in the house,
nice.
Which kind of started us both creating a lot more than we had before, and within the same room and the same environment. And that's, I think, what may have spawned us thinking of doing stuff together.
Oh, that's true.
So would you work in the room at the same time? Would you take turns? Was it just a big mishmash? How did that work?
Usually at the same time. Like, it's interesting. There's something about being together that amplifies that artistic energy. Like, we've even found that preparing for this show, is that we each kind of do our own work separately, and then Caitlin would text or something and say, do you mind if I come over and work there? And then, like, she'd be working in the dining room on the table, and I'd be in the art room doing my thing. And we seemed to get a lot more done and be a lot more energized and focused when we were together, which is interesting.
Wow, that's great. I like hearing about that. And it makes complete sense to me. I get it. And I guess I'm kind of envious, because as a musician, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless you're playing the same song. But, two people practicing in the same room doesn't generally happen.
No.
Okay, so you decide, let's go ahead, let's rent the venue, let's do a show together. So you find the venue. The venue is downtown Vancouver. The show happened last night. There was a lot that had to happen to get to that point. You had to choose through a lot of different pieces, decide what to bring based on portability and just a million decisions and hours of setup time and all the rest. What happened last night? How was it?
Good either way. Last night was good. I think it was a really good first show for us in the way of definitely learning experiences and just being able to interact with people. I found for me it was a huge benefit to hear from other people what they saw, and the stories that we put with our artwork seemed to hit home for a lot of people. So it was great to hear from people who said, oh, I absolutely love this photo, but what I loved more was your story behind it. And then they would tell me stories about their lives. And I found that very rewarding, and I found it very interesting as well to see what called to people, and just knowing that for the future.
Yeah, it's been my experience too as a songwriter that if a song touches people's hearts, they want to share their stories with you afterwards. And you to be open for them to do that. It's a powerful thing, and a very symbiotic thing. You learn things about them and about yourself and listening to other people tell their stories. And similar for you last night, Denise, people talking to you about things that you had created?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, my artistic side is not one that I have made public a lot. So to have people come and say, wow, like I had no idea that you did this. And I think what really struck me was how connected all of us really are at the heart, at the core, because as Caitlin said, like people, it's like people found themselves in the work, in different aspects of the work. They found something that reminded them of something. And, I had one beautiful woman say to me, I absolutely love that piece. And I was going to buy it. And then she lost her son. Her son died a few years ago. And she said, it reminds me of him. And I know that if I hung it in the house, I would cry every time that I saw it. And I thought, wow, just wow, like something that you create from your heart and your soul. You have no idea how that's going to impact people. Just trust that, your joy going out into the world has a ripple effect way beyond what you can even conceive of.
A lot of people, new people in your lives, a real mix of people you know, people you don't know.
It was an interesting mix, actually, because there was some of Caitlin's friends, some of my friends, some that know both of us, family. Some people brought guests that we weren't expecting were going to be there, and so it was. I quite enjoyed it, like interacting with people and talking to people. There was one young man who came last night, and I haven't seen him since he was, oh my goodness, how old would Django have been the last time I saw him? I don't know. But now he's this great big, he's probably 6'3", and like a really striking, beautiful young man who is in training to be an Olympic high jumper. And it was just like, wow, seeing people we haven't seen for ages and getting caught up on their lives. It was, I don't know, I found it a really warm environment and beautiful venue, just a beautiful venue. So it was, as Caitlin said, for a first show, I'm really happy. We learned a lot, things that we might do differently next time. And
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What did you learn? Whatever you feel comfortable sharing that is, because maybe some of the things you learned you don't want to share. But.
I think the biggest thing for me is I would want to have literally everything ready before the venue is even booked. Because I tend to procrastinate, and I'm very good at it. And it just... I think too with moving, that was an added stress, but I think it was way too much. So I feel like just more organization in the way of just knowing exactly what you want before even setting that date. Because then that way it's really just you're setting up, you're doing the promotion, and that's all you really need to worry about. And definitely, like if you're creating within that space of time, you could still showcase more. It's just you don't feel like you have a deadline for anything.
So I need a little clarification on my end. So you weren't sure what pieces to show, and so that was adding to the stress of like, what am I actually going to put in this show? Yeah,
it was definitely difficult to narrow down the photographs that I wanted to put onto canvas, especially to tie into our theme of worth 1,000 words. So basically what would resonate with me and what would resonate with everyone else, as well as what would look good on somebody's wall or something that they would want on canvas. As well as the paintings I showcased. It was my first time showing my paintings, which was a big step. And even within that, I feel you can often look at a piece of work and feel like there's still touch-ups you want to do. And even stuff kind of as I went along, I get inspired to do something. And so I think, okay, maybe I'll try this and see if I have the time to complete it before the art show. But looking back, although it did inspire some things, I think I would have rather had everything ready for what I wanted to showcase.
And as you were saying to me on last Monday, a lot of images to choose from, right? Over 4,000?
Yeah, 40,000. Yeah.
Oh, 40? Good Lord.
Yeah.
40,000.
Yeah, so
Wow.
I mean, I usually have a system, the way I organize them, and I rate them based on how I thought. So at least I had pre-filtered it down, but it was still probably, I don't know, 8,000 images going through and trying to figure it out. And even just asking my mom's opinion of showing her a photograph and saying, this means a lot to me, but does it resonate with you? And that helped me a bit to be able to figure out what exactly was good enough to be in the show that would resonate with me and would be great for other people as well.
Yeah. And Denise, what about you? What did you learn?
That I would want more time. Like we put this together in 6 months, and having a year now between this one and the next one, that feels much more doable. There was a lot kind of happened in the middle. I ended up having to move because my landlord sold the house. So there was, within that 6 months, I had several things happen that kind of everything got crammed together. The other thing is, I think I would love to find a venue for the next one where we could actually put the work up and have it stay somewhere for like a month or something. Yeah. So we have, like last night we were there, we were putting the artwork up, then we had the show, and then taking it all down. Like we did that in a 5 or 6 hour period, and it was a little bit crazy. So I'd like to shift that. And the other thing is in the marketing and the promotion part of it, I think I know for myself, we thought we marketed it in a lot of places, and like the analytics from our pages and stuff showed how many people clicked in, like how far of a reach things went, and gauging by the number of people who came, we need to cast a bigger net next year, I think, and maybe start it sooner. I don't know. It's a learning process, and for sure, those are, I think, the key pieces for me in it.
And as we said last time, I love the fact that you called it the first annual, that you're already thinking that this will be a regular event, regardless of where you are, Caitlin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We even had one woman come, and she was very excited about it, and she said, please let me know when the next one is and where it'll be. So she was already excited for the next show, which was great to hear.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. This time of year, you're thinking? Springtime, May? Or
I
don't know.
I personally would not do it in May again. I found a lot of people were on vacation, traveling, weddings have started. It's end of the year for anybody who has kids. So it seemed to be, there was a lot going on in everybody else's lives. So personally for me, I think the best time would be end of winter, beginning of spring, like February, March.
Okay.
I don't know about it.
Okay. Denise, are you thinking the same?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but for sure, May. There was a lot going on because of the people. There were even people who bought tickets who ended up not coming because things came up and they weren't able to make it. So it would be, I think, a good thing to try a different time of year and see if that works better.
Right.
Because the ultimate goal is that. I know for me, my pieces are, I said the other day, it's like bringing a little piece of heaven to earth. And, the more people that get to see that and are impacted by it in a positive way, the better. And so, if we can find a way to get that out to more people, I think that would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I think you've already answered this, but let me ask it this way and just see if a different answer comes up for each of you. What was the most unexpected thing that happened last night?
That's a good question. Do you have one? I think for me it was more people's reactions to my work, in the way of I had quite a number of people talk to me about certain pieces I'd done and how it made them emotional and relating to different periods of their life and what they had gone through. And I expected people to find something they liked in a photo, but I didn't expect people to find emotion in my photos. So I think that was a pleasant surprise for me, just to hear people's backstories of how they connected with my work, and especially with my paintings, since it was the first time showing them. Having people get emotional over one of my paintings was a big deal for me.
Let's talk a little bit about your paintings for a second and then come back to photography. I'm going to probably ask you the same question about both, but yeah, talk about a little bit about your painting. I know you had said last time watercolors.
Acrylic.
And was in that?
Yeah.
Acrylic, yeah.
Acrylic is usually my main medium I work within. And yeah, of course, watercolor as well. But I usually, something has to inspire it. I'm not usually painting all day, every day kind of thing. I know there's some painters where they always have their paints out, they're always working. For me, it's something hits home, and then I just go to a canvas. Or if I'm having a bad day, I find relief and relax in being able to just use my brush and the paint strokes. And because of that, a lot of my paintings are very emotional, either with happiness or sadness. And then within my paintings, I usually always write a letter as to why I painted them, what inspired it, what songs I was listening to while I was creating it, because often I'll find one song and have it on repeat the whole time I'm painting. Yeah.
Neat. And of course, as you were both saying to me last time, you had what you were just describing, all the words about the piece somewhere nearby, right? So that they could read that and then have their own experience of it too. So learn what your experience was and then have their experience of it and then have conversations.
Yeah, I think that was another surprising thing for me, was that a lot of people, when they bought the canvases, they wanted my write-ups on the canvases. They wanted the story behind it as well. So that was pretty cool, that people, the stories really helped them engage within the work.
Wow. And Denise, what about you?
The
Most
unexpected
unexpected thing.
I think the most unexpected thing was I had two people come that one of them I haven't seen for probably 12 years and the other for quite a while. And they called me like last minute yesterday and said, online ticket sales had ended and, can we still come? And I said, sure, we'll find a way to process your payment at the door kind of thing. And they reminded me like totally about the whole theme of your show, Nathan, because they said to me, like, oh my God, 12 years ago, you'd be hiding behind the door kind of thing. And now here you are out promoting yourself and do these incredible things. Like, how did you get here? And they stopped me in my tracks because I thought, how did I get here? And it's like, you have the dream and it's one step at a time. And sometimes it takes longer and sometimes it's shorter. But to have someone who knew me 12 years ago and then seeing through their eyes what a transformation they felt they were witnessing in me and my ability to put my work out there and put myself out there. So.
Well, that's great. And Denise, Caitlin, coming back to you. How do you, I think we talked a little bit about what subjects you like to photograph. Actually, no, I don't even know if we did that. What do you like to photograph? Well, no,
Yeah.
we did talk about that. We talked about nature being an important, a powerful thing for you, and so you were talking about how you were drawn to one particular person and dedication to his craft, and how he goes to the ends of the earth to just being in these environments that most people would never get a chance to experience, and how you have that bug inside of you too. So you talked about that in photography, but we didn't talk about what inspires you to paint. Like what do you normally paint? What expresses itself in your painting?
Usually I tend to paint more abstract pieces. I'm not sure how I would explain my process, or if I have a certain style. I've recently started doing more three-dimensional paintings, so I'll glue things onto the canvas and then paint over top of them, which has been a really fun experience for me. But yeah, it's usually always an event in my life happens that kind of inspires me to get painting, and usually I try to just show my emotion through the movement and the colors. Or I had one painting that I had done to represent basically getting away from things that oppressed me and getting away from people telling me who I should be in my life, and just the feeling of freedom that I get to moving back to Europe. And I started doing this painting, and it's kind of amazing what happens through the process, because I started out just doing colors, and eventually it actually looked like there was a woman's bust in the painting, so her face and just sort of colors splashing outward, basically washing out the darkness. And it ended up being the colors of the German flag, which was actually what made my concrete decision to move to Germany. Because at the time I was trying to decide between France or Germany, and I started this painting, and then I sat back and I just said, it's black, yellow, and red. Like, clearly my subconscious is telling me something I'm not realizing. And from that moment forward, I said, it's Germany, and just went full speed ahead that way.
Wow, what a great story. And I've never heard of three-dimensional painting. That's a new concept for me. Where did you get exposed to that, or
me and my mom were actually looking through chapters, and she was looking for quilting magazines, and I just looked down, and there was one about painting, and I was flipping through, and I saw one. I said, this is quite interesting, because I'm not sure whether it was the same medium or whether it was metal and then painted. But it was three-dimensional, and it was basically all different objects glued on and made into painted into shapes. And it was something completely new to me. And I said, you know what, I want to try this. And it ended up being a lot of fun.
Wow, that's wild. So, and this certainly, of course, makes me think about your work, Denise, and fabric, and the three-dimensionality of that.
Yeah.
And just a nice tie-in.
Yeah, that was a comment from several people last night, was that they had never seen anything like that before. They had, they've seen quilts where it's, pretty flat, but then I use beads, I use crystals, I use copper, I use all sorts of things to embellish. And so it does become a three-dimensional piece. And I think I really enjoyed that feedback, because I find that I create and I don't know that it's original, or is it original? I mean, we all draw from the same source, I guess, but until people say, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. So it was, I've been doing that for a while now, and I have actually seen some fabric artists who use paper and different metals and that sort of thing. So it brings a whole new kinesthetic awareness to it.
Mm-hmm. Now we had talked about it. It was kind of a playful part of the conversation, as I'm remembering, this whole idea of, you're creating this incredible kinesthetic stuff. It just must be so much fun to create, all these different textures and colors and hardnesses and softnesses and all this stuff. And you don't want people to touch it. You want people to just look at it. So how did that play out last night?
That's a good question. You know something? I don't. They had the tables set up against the walls, and so the pieces that were hung, people couldn't touch them because they were out of reach. But I didn't notice whether people.
I don't think I saw anybody touching, but I didn't really.
Yeah, because it was, people wanted to talk to us, and so we spent. That's what most of our evening was talking to people. So I didn't really observe. I did observe people reading the stories for sure, but I didn't see anybody touching anything, grabbing onto something.
Well, it's a good thing I wasn't there because, I mean, I obviously would have respected the work, but I just hearing the combination of all those different things. If I wouldn't have been able to touch them, I would have been looking really close at all of them, just kind of get as close to all that texture as I could, because it must be a lot of fun to look at and to touch as well as to create. So.
Yeah, and I wonder, because the artists were in the room, if people just naturally respected that, like if it had been, if we hadn't been there, whether people would have picked things up, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, how long was the show? 2 hours, right? 7 to 9?
Yeah.
So part of the show in daylight and then part of the show in artificial light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously that impacted how everything looked. And how did both of you feel about that? I guess I'm thinking more about you, Caitlin, and just how you thought the work looked once the natural light was gone. And
I think we lucked out pretty well in the way that most people were generally on time, and they'd gone through and read all the stories and seen the work by the time the light started to drop. But definitely by the very end of it, I was not happy with the indoor lighting. But by that point, people had already purchased things, and everybody had already gone through the work. So I wasn't too panicked about it. I think everybody saw it in the proper light. But it was actually even funny because there were problems with it being light and having a lot of natural light coming in as well, because some of my canvases are lighter, and so you could see the shadows of the woodwork behind the canvases. So it was just sort of moving things around and getting them in the right spot where the lighting hit it just right.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing I'm remembering that both of you talking about is that some pieces, would be for sale and some wouldn't. That some were very private and you wanted to hang on to. And how did that play out? Were there changes that happened? Were there things that you weren't expecting people to want? That did you get into conversations where people said, "Yeah, but I really want that," or the opposite, the ones that you really wanted to sell, nobody that you thought they would like, they wouldn't go near, or just how did that play out?
I think that may have been more me that set that stipulation than Caitlin, because I had a progression of my work from my earliest work to my most current piece, and several of the older pieces had such sentimental value, and they were created because they were like a diary of a relationship. And one in particular was one dedicated to my mom. So, like sometimes people say, well, everybody has their price, but no, I wouldn't, there isn't anything anyone could offer me for that piece, but it's a beautiful demonstration of my handwork and the heart that went into it. So, I think it was more me that did that. And I don't recall anybody saying, that they wanted something that was not for sale. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
For me, there were a couple paintings that would have been hard to let go of, but I still had a price on them. Just because for me, it's, although they're emotional pieces for me, it's more very much in the past, and I'm okay to let that go. There are paintings that I really love that I wouldn't showcase just because I don't want them to be sold. But yeah, I think I didn't. It was mainly Mom who had that stipulation versus me.
Well, I'm wishing that I had images of the work to show people, because here we are talking about, it's like that great Frank Zappa quote, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. I would love to be able to show people what you two created, because I'm sure it must be just breathtaking. And the name of the show was. Please remind. I always get the second part. I just forget the first part.
Worth 1,000 words.
Worth 1,000 words is the whole title. Okay, I thought there was something before that. So yeah, I'm sure that every single thing that you shared was worth at least that. And so an entire evening worth of conversation with everybody there, I can see that happening so easily. Did you notice as you were speaking that other people would join the conversation? Would they kind of overhear something and then kind of want to get in on it as they heard you explaining it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that happened a lot, because especially at the end, it was kind of funny because Caitlin has one shot of Vancouver skyline at night that is just exceptional, and anywhere that she shows it, she has more requests for it. And so she only had one of them printed up last night, and as one lady had it like bagged and was ready to go, like people were saying, but I want that one. So it was kind of funny. We were joking about trip her and take the bag, So, but people were definitely, even though they read the stories, they wanted to hear more. Like they wanted more detail from. It was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was almost.
And did you? Sorry,
it was
go
almost
ahead.
to the point where we almost should have done every single story 1,000 words. Literally.
As opposed to like what, a paragraph or? Okay. Huh. Interesting. So will you do that? Will you make longer write-ups for each one?
I think so. Because
that's one of the things you've learned.
Yeah, I really, in listening to people's comments and the things that they said, they really valued that. Even though they had their own interpretation, they loved hearing what prompted the piece and what it meant to us. So.
And did people, I'm curious about this, did people read the descriptions before they would, experience the piece, or would they spend time with it and then read it, or was it a mix, or just did you notice any patterns around that?
I think what I noticed was a mix. There were some people where they did a circuit through and then went back and read them. And there were other people where they did take their time at every single one. And I think there were other people who kind of did half the room, chatted with us, and did the other half of the room. So, yeah, everybody kind of had their own way of going about it.
Coming back to that photograph that everybody wanted a copy of, have you considered doing that, Caitlin? Having like a number of I want to say limited edition, maybe that feels a little too pompous to say at this point, but the idea of making several copies of one image and making that one available, or blowing it up, or,
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. I've definitely had issues with copyright infringement with people, and I've had issues with the picture itself for a while, people just wanting to get it so that they could print it, and which definitely is not nice as an artist when someone basically wants to take your work for free. So I have considered changing the way I go about it. And I think that's also a reason why I didn't print a huge number of them, even though I knew it was a highly popular picture. I haven't exactly made a definite decision on it, but it's definitely an interesting concept I'll be thinking about.
And Denise, that's never going to be your issue, because everything you create is one of a kind. So, okay, so you learned a lot. Next one will be in I'm going to say February or March. It's either going to be here or it's going to be in Germany.
Yeah.
What else? What other thoughts? What other thoughts you're having? I mean, it's the day after, so I realize it's. On the one hand, it just happened last night. On the other hand, it just happened last night. You may be fresh with ideas about.
Yeah, we haven't. This is
like.
the first time that we've sat together since, so we haven't actually really debriefed what happened. We're kind of doing that live now with you. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was sort of a quick tear down, and then it just happened that we were on different parking levels, and it was sort of like, oh, we didn't even see each other afterwards. But I think we're usually pretty much on the same page most of the time, and I think we're both under the consensus of wanting the work to be showcased for a longer period of time, and then having a get together either at the end or the beginning.
Has this? How would I ask this? And again, it may be way too early, but I'm very curious to see, and wondering if this is already kind of bubbling up in either of you or both of you. Did last night's experience make you think about some art that you would like to create specifically for the show? I'm not asking the question well. Was there something about, maybe this is the best way to ask it. Is there something about last night's experience that you think is going to shape future works somehow? Like, for instance, Caitlin, you talking about the lighting of, how much natural light there was at the beginning, and that actually did a disservice to some of your work. Will you then gravitate towards using different materials to mount, or using darker colors, or I don't know what? I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah, I think for me, just because of the surprise of the way people really reacted emotionally to the work, that definitely inspires me to show things more personal to myself, and the fact that people really did love the stories, were wanting to read the stories, take the time to read them, and wanted to take them home with the work that they purchased. That definitely gives me ideas for the next show of writing more and including pieces that I thought, oh, well, it might just be too personal and they might miss it, because it seemed like the stories were a huge part of it for people. Where I didn't necessarily think that was actually going to be the case. So that was a good surprise. And I think, like you said, with the lighting, it may also change and factor into what I would showcase. But if it was in a gallery type setting, usually they have proper professional lighting, but it might change the way I look at the coloration of the canvases and how they might look.
Right. Can you give us an example of something that you thought was too personal, if you feel comfortable? Something that was too personal, you felt was too personal for this show, that in hindsight you're thinking, I could have brought that. They would have appreciated that.
I think it's more photographs where I look at it and I have an extremely strong reaction to it because it's a moment that's so important to my life. When I look at the image, I think, well, nobody else is going to get that. And so I didn't choose it. I can't tell you particularly what images that would come to mind for that. But I do have images where I've shared with blog posts and just kind of talked about what it encapsulated for me or what it summarized to me at a huge moment in my life. And I think now from this first show, I'd feel much more comfortable sharing a whole lot more with the audience.
And was that your experience too, Denise?
Yeah, I think I witnessed people really being drawn more to, I had a mix of work there. Like I had some things that I had done in a workshop. So I was replicating someone else's pattern or someone else's work. And those pieces didn't draw near as much attention or gratitude from people as my own personal designs and embellishments, like the pieces that were mine from start to finish. So definitely next year I would not include anything that was not my original design and my work. Yeah.
So a real invitation for the both of you to just show yourselves
Sure.
more. That it was not only okay, but encouraged and
Yeah.
appreciated for you to the more you did that, the more response you got. It seems.
Definitely.
What a wonderful thing to happen. I can't imagine a better outcome
Yeah.
from the show than that. It's just this wonderful affirmation, that people appreciate your self-expression.
Yeah, it's fabulous because I know part of my fear going into it was, I had not exhibited my artwork before, and so to me it's like, okay, this is my soul made visible, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get emotional talking about this, but I don't know what my expectation was, but it certainly wasn't that people would feel so connected. Because a piece of my soul reached a piece of theirs. It was an incredible validation of my whole process.
Yeah.
And do you see that too?
Yeah.
Is that your?
Definitely. Through different photographs, people would tell me different stories of how it connected to them emotionally. But there was one painting that I did, and I did it when I lost somebody that I loved a lot. Not in the sense of that they died, in the sense of that it didn't work. And I had quite a few people come up to me and want to know more and talk about it, and actually say they had a very emotional reaction to it, and would explain their loss that they had gone through, and their love and loss stories, which were very fascinating and very great to hear from other people. Just that connection that they saw and felt within that painting.
Wow. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Well, I'm glad you're getting to debrief with me.
Well, thank you for asking the questions, because it helps us to think about it in a different way. Like, what actually did happen last night? I'm sure we're going to be unpacking the pieces for a long time, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it could well be that months from now you'll pick up one of the pieces that was in the show last night and just have a whole flood of things come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious to see because I know how could you not be impacted by last night on many levels, how it rolled out, who showed up, how they responded, all those things, how that will then shape your next experience in a way that you weren't aware of last night because you'd never experienced it before. Yeah. So, wow. So you leave on Monday for Germany.
Yes.
And it's a one-way ticket.
Yes, it is.
Wow. So there will be a farewell dinner on Sunday night and many tears shed. I believe.
Yes, probably.
If I may speak for your mother.
I think the worst will be when I drop her at the airport on Monday. But then I'm going to have to take some time and have my little breakdown before I drive home.
Yeah. Well, perhaps you should go with someone to the airport.
Yeah, maybe.
A third person who could be your safety. I can't even drive.
Yeah, and I make it sound like it's a terrible thing, but it's not. Like, I'm so thrilled for Caitlin to fly, to just be where she came to this planet to be and do what she came here to do. I've watched her since she came back from Europe, and at times it's felt like I've been watching a caged bird, and it's hurt my heart. So to know that she's going off to follow her bliss, the biggest part of me is thrilled, and then the mom part of me says, "No, stay here." Yeah. But I'm gonna,
so Caitlin, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm going to let the higher part of me say farewell from my heart, and we'll see her in Germany.
So talk about that, Caitlin. Just tell us about Germany, and well, I don't know if it's Germany specifically or Europe or overall, but just what's drawing you there? What's calling you to be there?
I ever since I was younger, I wanted to go to Europe, and it always sort of seemed like an impossibility. I honestly never thought I would get there. And when I was 19, I went on a study abroad, and literally as soon as I touched down, it felt like home. It's hard to explain to people, but to me, I feel more a sense of belonging and happiness and home in Europe, anywhere in Europe, more than I've ever had in Canada. And living in London, it was a really amazing experience for me because I honestly used to tell people I was walking bad luck. Nothing ever went right. I was depressed a lot of the time, very unhappy, just didn't know my sense of worth or even have love for myself. And moving to London, it was an amazing experience in the way that people's reception of me was completely different. And I'd finally found somewhere where people actually supported me. They actually really enjoyed hearing about what I did for work. And they truly accepted me for who I was and supported me unconditionally. And that was something I hadn't really ever experienced other than with my family. And it's actually funny because the whole process of moving to London, everything worked out flawlessly. And my whole time in London, I was happy. And it was just, it was an amazing experience in the way that I just sort of assumed I would always be unhappy. And that's just the way the world worked until I realized there's a whole nother world out there. And I fit into that much better than I do in Canada. And that's not to say I'm not proud to be Canadian, but Europe is home to me, and it will always be home to me.
So how's your German?
It's not very good. Still learning. I know a bit of the basics and a bit of easy words, but I've always kind of been the person where I really like change and I like to be on my toes. So I'd rather throw myself in than dip my toes in slowly. So, and the best way to learn a language is when you're deep within the country and you're speaking to people who were born and raised with that language.
Yeah, because there's only so much you can communicate with people.
Yeah. Charades.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm originally from Montreal, and people say to me, "So, are you bilingual?" And I say, "Well, I can get by." I said, "But the big mistake I made was I never had a French girlfriend. That would have solved the whole issue, but never happened."
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe there's a German man in your life. Who knows? But whether that happens or not, I'm sure that, as you said, because you're submerging yourself in that environment.
Yeah.
You will learn, because it'll just be all
Yeah,
around
definitely.
you. Yeah. And I'm also interested. I know that. I mean, I'm no master of languages, but I just remember hearing that one of the interesting things about language is you literally think differently in every language. There are some languages that don't have words for certain things. So literally, some cultures don't think about certain things because they don't even have the words to describe them.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what the German mentality, the German language and culture, whatever, what impact that has on your art, on your images, on your painting.
Definitely. I've done research within that myself, and it's true. You have a different personality in every language because your language is stored in a different part of your brain. And even when speaking basic French, I can feel there's a shift in who I am. And even within London, although it's still English, just the change of the accent and the dialect, it definitely makes you feel like a different person. So I'm quite fascinated to see what I'm like in German. And and I didn't think about it until now, how that would affect my art. But that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So are you planning to study there, or do you have any structure set up yet?
No.
What's happening? How it's going to be?
Okay. No, not really. I'm traveling Europe for 4 months before I reach Germany. So that was sort of a big thing for me because I was supposed to have done that last time around and it didn't happen. So if I've learned anything, it's do things while you can. So yeah, I'm going to go see all the countries I've wanted to see and then head to Germany. And from there, I know the city I'm going to. The rest of it's sort of up in the air, and that's exactly what I did with London. And everything just worked out flawlessly, and just finding what you love. And I'm just basically going to be focusing on my art while I'm there. I do have the legal possibility to work or to study. And so eventually, if I do want to study, I may do it there, because they actually announced post-secondary was free for international students in Germany. Yeah, so it's a big opportunity. But I wanted to explore Germany first and their schools and what cities I liked best before officially enrolling in any of their universities.
So, Denise, when are you going?
Yeah, we'll have to see once. Both of us have a love of Ireland as well, so we may have to combine a trip where we meet there and then head back to Germany or something. But I'll wait till Caitlin gets settled and knows her way around a bit, and then come over and explore.
Right, so that's what I was going to say, is you're waiting for that 4-month period of Caitlin moving around before you. So is Ireland, is Irish your heritage?
It is on my father's side. I think my great grandmother or something is Irish. But yeah, I went last year for the first time, and similar experience that Caitlin was describing, like got off the plane and it was like, oh my God, this is home. And I have a girlfriend there. I was really lucky to be able to go different places. We kind of did the East Coast and down a little bit to the south, and I've always wanted to go to the West Coast, to Connemara and Galway and places like that. And I didn't go, and honestly, I remember saying to my girlfriend, I'm not going there because I suspect that if I go there, that'll be it. Like, I won't be going back to Canada. And so it felt like I had more stuff and more pieces to do here yet. It was not time to do that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what the future may bring, because possibilities are endless.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm hearing a similarity in the both of you, just a real strong rumbling to be elsewhere perhaps, and just allowing yourself to answer it, to just see where it takes you. What are you, artist or something?
Exactly.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, I've so enjoyed these conversations. Again, I'm sorry that the last one, went a little sideways, but hey, I got a chance to speak to you for another hour. It's great. It's just wonderful to hear your shared and your individual journeys. And I'm really, really interested in seeing what the traveling is going to do to the art. There's no question that for me, it's going to play a huge part in what happens next. So that's going to be very cool. So the great thing about the show is we can do it anywhere in the world. Just saying. Just planting the seed there, kids.
Thank you so much, Nathan. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. So, folks, you have been listening to Denise Cunningham and Caitlin Mellor, mother and daughter team, for the time being in Langley, BC, but it looks like big changes are afoot. Caitlin is moving to Germany in a few days, and who knows, Denise may be relocating to Ireland in the next few years. We'll see what happens. But I thank them both very much for modeling what this show is all about, which is taking small steps to live the big lives that we're all here to live. And if you would like to get in touch with either Caitlin or Denise, I have a whole swack of websites and Facebook pages, etc., to include underneath the replay of this show, which will be up within the next few days. Normally, I have it up pretty soon after we do this in real time, but I'm not able to do that tonight. But it will be up over the weekend. So yeah, Caitlin, I hope to do that before you go on Monday. That's my intention. So you will have it before you go. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and you two, you just stay right there. I'll do the official sign off, and this time it'll work.
Thanks, Nathan.
So you just stay right there. You're welcome. So thank you all for watching, everyone. May this hour serve you well on your journey. Peace and blessings.